You are listening to English Made Simple. This is episode 46, número 46. Hola amigos, how are ya? This is Milena from EnglishMadeSimple.net. How are you guys? Hope you guys are doing well. You know what I just realized? English Made Simple has been featured on iTunes, right next to BBC and Tony Robbins. Wow! Who would have thought that? Wow! And where's my applause? Oh, great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, we are approaching 30,000 downloads. Wow. So I guess it makes sense now. English Made Simple is still ranked high in iTunes. And that's thanks to you guys, my awesome listeners, who put up with my silly jokes all the time. Oh, and welcome to the new listeners. Thanks for joining the English Made Simple gang. We are now up to episode 46, so I suggest you also listen to all the previous ones as well. There should be well over 6 hours worth of information available right there for you guys. Excellent. I think this is enough of silliness on my part. Shall we continue now? Yes. And before we get on this show, let me send a special hello to Ahmed Said from Egypt. Yes, Egypt, or Egipto in Spanish, or Egipat in Serbian. Yes, you heard that right. Ahmed is from Egypt, and he's another raving fan of English Made Simple podcast. Thanks for your kind comments, buddy, and keep listening. We've got more countries tuning into this show. The list is growing every month. Awesome, that's amazing. So, guys, in the last episode, we touched on the phrase used to. Hope that was useful to you, and I think it's a good segue into the past. Now, let's talk about the past. The past tense, I mean, not my past, okay? The tense, the English past tense. When we talk about the past, we think about an action in the past, right? It is always about the action. Was the action ongoing, continuous in the past, or has the action stopped sometime in the past, indefinitely? To talk about the past, we use tenses such as the simple past tense, the present perfect tense, the past perfect tense, the past continuous tense. And you know what, guys? Most of you already know this. Most of you would already know basic definitions of these tenses. What some of my students struggle with is the pronunciation of the regular verbs in the past tense. Let's not even go into the irregular verbs. That's a whole different beast. Irregular verbs, don't you love them? Irregular verbs are very special. We can look at them another time, but let's keep this simple for now. Let's focus on the regular verbs. I want to focus on the pronunciation of the regular verbs in the past. Well, some of my students often get confused when they try to pronounce regular verbs in the past tense. Yes, they can write them down on the paper. It looks all correct. When we say them out loud, when we pronounce them, that's where the issues occur. In this episode, I will share a tip on how to pronounce the regular verbs. This will be very easy to remember, guys, I assure you. In English, it's all about the sounds. When you listen to the British language, you can almost hear them sing, right? Especially for the longer sounding vowels, like, for example, oh, Nigel, you simply can't do that. Can't do that. Yeah, it's almost like a singing. What I'm trying to say by this is that English language is all about the sounds. And this is very important when we talk about the past tense, when we try to pronounce the regular verbs in the past tense. So there are 3 different sounds we need to be aware of when we pronounce the verbs in the past tense. There is a T sound, there is a D sound, and id sound. And I will come back to this again. But for now, let's consider these 4 verbs in their present form. Talk, manage, complete, and decide. Okay, 4 verbs. Let's look at the first verb, talk. Okay, if the last syllable sounds softer, or technically speaking, these are called voiceless sounds. Talk, for example, has that k sound, and that's a very soft sound. If there is a softer sounding last syllable, like talk, kiss, laugh, finish, for example, the past tense of those will sound like t. So, talked, kissed, laughed, and finished. Okay, it's a very soft t sound when we pronounce these verbs in their past tense. Okay, so these voiceless sounds, they are p, k, s, f, and sh. Okay. In some grammar books, they call them voiced and unvoiced sounds, but I call them hard and soft sounds. Harder sounding last syllables would be, for example, manage, change, stay, plan, expel. So to me, they sound harder. They're not so soft like talk, kiss, laugh, and finish. Okay, these are in present tense. In the past tense, it would be managed, changed, stayed, planned, and expelled. Right? So it's not t sound, it's a d sound. If you feel comfortable saying it with a t, that's fine because it's still in the past tense, okay? Managed, it's kind of hard to say it with a t. Stayed, you kind of want to say it with a harder d sound. D for dog. Planned, expelled. Cool. Are you with me so far, guys? Awesome. I'll give you an example in the past tense, a sentence in the past tense. In the last episode, I talked about the phrase used to. That's my example using the verb talk in the past tense. I talked about the phrase used to. In the Spanish telenovela, Grand Hotel, it's called Grand Hotel, Julio and Alicia kissed. So that's in the past tense. Yesterday I went out with my friends and we had fun and we laughed together. So it sounds like a T, laughed. I finished my homework yesterday. Great. So we don't say it talked, kissed, laughed, and finished. We say talked, kissed, laughed, or finished. Great. Now, here's a tip for you guys. So, remember how I mentioned just earlier, I said there are 3 different sounds we need to be aware of when we pronounce the verbs in the past tense. There is a t sound, there is a d sound, and id sound. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I want to now give an example of id sound. And this is a very simple one. I want you to remember this one. I'll give you a tip. For any regular verb that has the last syllable that ends with a sound t or d, for example, complete or decide, these are 2 verbs, we have to pronounce them as id. Okay? In the past tense, we would have to pronounce them as id. So, for example, completed, okay, decided. We have to make it id. We have to make that last syllable id. Completed, decided. So why do we have to change this sound at the end? Well, the way I remember this is that if we just say complete, if we don't say completed, this is actually the present tense. Complete is the present tense, and if we are talking in the past, we must enunciate the last bit to sound as completed. So that's how we know it's in the past tense. More examples of this type of regular verbs that give us the id sound at the end is waited, divided, investigated, updated, hated, accepted, added. Okay, there's many of those regular verbs. But I've noticed that some of my students would just say complete or divide. They would not pronounce the completed, divided sound. So that's just a tip. If a regular verb ends with a t or a d sound, complete ends with a t sound, complete. Divide ends with a D sound. We must add that id at the end. Completed, divided. And that's how we know that the verb is actually in the past tense, right? Cool. I hope you're following me so far, guys. I hope that was helpful. I will give you a test now, just to, make sure that you were listening to me. I will give you a list of regular verbs, and I want you to pronounce them in their past tense. If it helps you, you can write them down and then try to pronounce them, if that helps you. I want you to practice at home, okay? Here's a list of, let's say, 10 or 15. Let's say 10 verbs, okay? Here's a list of 10 regular verbs I want you to practice at home in their past tense, okay? Number 1, to want, to use, to work, to call, to try, to need, to move, to happen, to include, to change, to watch. Is anybody counting? I think that's 10. I'm not sure. I'll give you 2 more. To follow, to stop. Excellent. Right. Okay. That's a long list for you guys. So try and practice those at home. Practice the pronunciation. And if you have to, listen to this episode again. Right. And now we have finished with today's episode. Just before we wrap up, I want to mention that you've probably received an email from me about the short and sweet episode ideas, because my number 1 priority is for you to learn, and a few of you probably have received my email twice. Oopsie daisy, as Donald Trump says, I apologize. He means to say I apologize. We had a technical glitch which is all fixed now, so just ignore 1 email. I'll collect some ideas and share them with you guys on Wednesday. Thank you for those who replied to my email. And guys, all transcriptions are available on my website, englishmadesimple.net. englishmadesimple.net. If you guys have any questions, please send me a message. Until then, hasta la próxima. I'll see you next time. Bye.